World War II Museum. The date is February 21st, 2014, and I'm here today in Atlanta, Georgia. Sir, could you please state your name and the unit that you served in during World War II?
My name is Richard Bourne, and I was in the 9th Air Force. I flew combat missions out of St. Quentin, France. It was about 24 missions, if I recall right. I think that's correct. And I was in the 397 Bomb Group, 596 Bomb Squadron, and in the 9th Air Force out of St. Quentin.
And when and where were you born?
I was born in Boston, Massachusetts.
And what was the date? I
was born June 24th, 1921.
And can you tell me a little bit about what life was like growing up in Boston?
Well, I stayed in Boston just a very short time and I don't remember too much about it. I remember I lived a block away from Fenway Park, and my uncle took me to a ball game one time, and I saw Babe Ruth hit a home run in 1927, I believe it was. I was 6, 7 years old. And then we moved to Connecticut from there, and my mother married, my father was dead already. I never saw my real father. He was in World War I, and he drowned on the 4th of July, 1921, and my mother was still in the hospital with me giving birth, so I never saw him. And my mother married a nice fella, and we moved to Connecticut. He had a furniture factory in Connecticut, and we moved there. I was brought up in New Haven, Connecticut.
Would you consider New Haven your hometown?
I would, yes.
And what was life like for you personally? Did you have a lot of friends?
I had a lot of friends at school. I remember going to grammar school and junior high school and high school. I graduated high school in Connecticut, and I was a sickly young fellow. I had asthma, and the doctors told my mother in order to get him well, he needs to go where the climate is warmer. So we decided that the best place to go was a southern school to go to college. And my parents, they knew some people from Georgia, so I applied to the University of Georgia and was accepted, and ended in Georgia. I think it was 1938 when I went to college here in Athens.
And what were you studying?
Well, I didn't know what I wanted to study, but I majored in economics, and which of course it's a general courses, you know. But I majored in economics and graduated in 1942.
So you were at college when Pearl Harbor was attacked.
Yes, I was.
Can you talk about what that day was like and how
you found out?
Yes,
for Pearl Harbor was on a Sunday, because I can remember that very clearly. I was playing bridge at a sorority house with my wife. We weren't married yet, but she was my girlfriend. That's where I met her. And we were playing bridge, and it came over the radio that, about Pearl Harbor, and I remember that very distinctly. And that's about it. And I knew that eventually, although I was a junior in college at that time, and I knew I had another year to go to school, and then I entered the service.
Were you in any ROTC programs?
Yeah, I was in ROTC for the first 2 years at Georgia. I sure was. I was in the cavalry, and we rode horses. And of course, we didn't know that we weren't going to use any horses in World War II at the time, but we didn't know there was going to be a war either, for sure. But I was in the cavalry. I took 2 years ROTC. Yeah.
Do you remember voting in your first presidential election?
No, I really don't.
Just a random question.
Yeah.
So you're at Georgia, Pearl Harbor is attacked. What did you notice in terms of changes, either on campus or just in society?
Well, we were in college, and it really didn't mean a whole lot to us. You know how college kids are, and I realized that all the reports were coming in about the war and about what we were doing, and everybody was going to be drafted, and people, they started to be shortages of gasoline and one thing and another, and you notice that everything is different. But to pin something down, I really couldn't tell you. to me, that was life, you know. I was still 14, 15, 16 years, 17 years old at the time.
Can you take me through how you decided to enlist and what that process was like?
Yeah, I graduated college and I knew that I was going to be drafted sooner or later, so I went home to Connecticut and I decided to go ahead and enlist. I went down to the recruiting office and they told me I'd have to, I was not 21 years old, so I'd have to get permission from my mother, so she came down and signed a release program, a release something that I forgot what it was she had to sign, but anyway, to release me to be able to go into service. So she did, and I went into the service, and as a civilian, they took me to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, and they swore me in there. And
what's that moment like when you swear in and take your oath?
Well, it's strange because you never had done anything like that before, and I never worked before. Well, I worked during the summers a lot while I was in school. But it was a job apparently, and they were gonna make us. Well, they first this one at Fort Devens that we all got in the train after that, and they took us down to Baltimore, Maryland, and they decided I'd be a good infantry soldier, so we went to Fort Meade, Maryland, and I think it was the 76th Division, if I recall right, and I learned the basics of being in the Army, and of course I knew a little bit about it from ROTC, left face, right face, things like that. So they made me a corporal, and we after about, I guess it was about 3-4 weeks, maybe a month, maybe 2 months, I'm trying to think, they called me in, they asked me, it was in October, I can remember this distinctly, in October of 1942. They called me in and asked me would I like to go to Officers Candidate School. And I said, yeah, I said, sure, I'd like to. They said, well, we're going to ask you, we're going to call you in a few days and we'll have and you'll meet some officers. And anyway, they called me in and they said, Corporal, they asked me one question and one question only. They said, do you know who the manager is for the team that just won the World Series? And I said, yeah, Billy Southworth. Now, back then, every man who was a man, we listened to the radio. And the World Series, it just ended in St. Louis, won the World Series, and Billy Southworth was the manager. So they asked me that, and they said, thank you very much, Corporal. We'll be in touch with you. And so I walked out of it. I said, that's crazy. And I said, but I knew that what was going to happen. I was going to OC school. That's all they asked me. So about 2 weeks later, they sent me to Fort Benning and to make a 90-day wonder out of me. And when I got out of there and I got my commission, I was a second lieutenant.
How did you feel? Was the infantry your first choice?
No, it was no choice. You don't have a choice. They tell you, you don't have a choice. Whatever, you're in the Army. You know, the Air Force was part of the Army at that time. And they sent me to Fort Benning, and I was going to, I was going to be an infantry soldier, which I was. And then from there, after Fort Benning, they sent me to Camp Van Dorn, Mississippi, and to train at the 99th Division. They were starting a new division called the 99th. And I had to train these guys come out of the hills of Kentucky and Tennessee and teach them left face, right face. They didn't know. Honestly, they were some of the most stupid kids I've ever seen. But they were a little bit younger than I was. But anyway, I taught them how to do this, and we drilled them, and I got a platoon, and I drilled them and learned it. They taught them everything I could that I learned from Fort Benning. And then we went on maneuvers. And we were on maneuvers, and it was in the summertime. I guess it must have been the summer of 1943. And we'd be out in the fields, and we're having maneuvers, and these airplanes would come over, and they'd strafe us. In order to strafe us, they couldn't use bullets, so they dropped flour sacks on us. And it was about 99 degrees in the shade, and there was no shade. So it was hot, and a flour sack hit me on the shoulder. And I got flour all over me, and I was sweating and everything else. I looked up in the air, and I never been in an airplane in my life. I said, by God, that's for me. I said, what the hell am I doing here on the ground? So about 2 weeks later, I got a weekend pass, and I went to Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And there was a flight surgeon there. And I went to see him, me and another fellow went. And I took a physical examination for flying. And I filled out an application, and they had to be processed and had to go through channels and through your commanding officer and everything else. And I forgot all about it. About 2 or 3 months later, after maneuvers were over, we went on to, they sent me out to Fort Ord, California to go fight the Japanese. So when I got out to Fort Ord, I found out I was going to have to be there 2 weeks to have jungle training to go fight the Japs. So I called my wife, which I was married. I married while I was a corporal in Baltimore, Maryland, when she was there. Anyway, when I got out there, when I found out, I called her and she came on out. Well, the day she got there, I got this big War Department orders from the War Department transferring me to Nashville, Tennessee to see if I could qualify for pilot training or for the Air Force. So this was in November, and I didn't have to report until February. I had 4 months. The commanding officer out there at Fort Ord, he said, well, you don't belong to us anymore, you belong in the Air Force. Go. So I took 4 months off, and Sylvia and I went all over. We went through the Midwest, and we came down here to Atlanta, where she lived. And we went home to Connecticut, and I finally reported to Nashville, and I took all those tests, psychomotor tests and one thing and another. And when I got through with them, every day they'd post the groups of different people that were where they were assigned to go to this Army Air Force base or that Army Air Force base, or go back to your former organization. And when they posted our group, my name wasn't on the top at all, and I didn't have to go back to my former organization because my name wasn't listed there. And on the bottom, it said, the following officers report to Major such and such on such and such a day. My name was on there. There was 2 of us. So they called me in and said, Lieutenant, you didn't make pilot training, but we feel that you'd be a very good bombardier navigator. You can have your choice. Or you can go back to your former organization. I said, well, I ain't going to go fight the Japs. That'd be stupid. So I said, I'll be a bombardier. I didn't know one from another. So they sent me to bombardier school. And I went to bombardier school. Golly, I went to...
Can you talk about some of the things that they have, a bombardier do to train you?
Yeah, we went to 18. We went in 18. Well, the last part we went, that was in Carlsbad, New Mexico. We flew AT-6 in the AT-6s, and those AT-6s out there in New Mexico, that adiabatic, the air would go up and down and knock these planes around. I mean, we'd be flying, bouncing around up there like rubber balls, and we'd have to take drift meetings, drift readings rather, and I have to look through these little things to line up the targets or whatever we were doing. And everybody who looked at that thing would hit you in the eye. Everybody would come off there. We all had circles, black circles around our eyes. And it was a bounce. We do that almost every day. And we learned how to operate the Northern bomb sight on trainers, and they were good. And I got real good at that. And of course, they teach you a lot of different things. And that was in New Mexico. But meanwhile, I went to basic training in Montgomery, Alabama, and then I went to Fort Myers, Florida for gunnery training and shoot shotguns. And
they have you do skeet shooting there?
Huh?
Skeet shooting? Skeet
shooting, right. Yeah. And we'd shoot off the back of a truck, and they teach you how to aim in front of the thing, so it was interesting. And then finally when got through with bombardier training in New Mexico. They sent us to Barksdale Field in Louisiana, where I picked up a crew, and we were supposed to go. From there, we went to Savannah. We were supposed to pick up an airplane in Savannah and fly overseas, but they ran out of planes, so we took a train to Fort Dix, New Jersey, and we got on a boat, and the ship was called the USS Mauritania. I still remember that.
What do you think about, or what did you think about your crew? And if you remember, where were some of the guys from?
Well, I picked up a crew here, and when we got overseas, it was everybody. You get a different crew altogether. Finally, we got to St. Quentin, France, and first the boat landed in Scotland. And then they went Hanley, a town called Hanley. I remember that. We stayed there, and then one night they took us in a C-47 to France, and that's where I met the crew that I flew with mostly there.
What was that boat ride like for you across the Atlantic?
It was first time. It was kind of bouncy. It was a good boat ride, and we played poker on the way over, and it was nice. And we had nothing to do there on the boat. I mean, we just. Took about, I think it was 4 or 5 days, 6 days, something like that.
And about what time was this when you got overseas?
What you mean? I got overseas. It was in December of 1944.
So the Battle of the Bulge was going on. Were you aware of that?
No, the Battle of the Bulge didn't come until spring of 1945.
December 16th.
December 16th?
Yes, sir.
Well, I remember I flew most of my missions. Are in that book. I can tell you right. Oh, well.
I got it.
Let me just see. Because I remember we were in the Battle of the Bulge. My first combat mission was on January 22nd, 1945. And the Battle of the Bulge was apparently still going on. Mm-hmm. So as far as I was concerned, that's when it started.
Okay.
Yeah, because when you're not in it, you don't know what's going on. But my first was on January 22nd, 45, and I flew my last mission on April 11th.
Can you take me through what an average day was like for you when you flew a mission, starting from when you woke up in the morning?
We woke up in the morning. The loading list is always posted the night before. And it was posted on there, and you wake up in the morning. Usually we get into the ships, we get dressed and get outside, and we go to briefing. And the trucks would pick us up, and we'd go out to the planes around 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And we'd sit there and wait until it was ready, time to take off. And my job was to get us to the rendezvous point. We had a rendezvous around, I guess, about 5,000 to 6,000 feet, and we'd rendezvous with everybody who was going on the mission. And then from the rendezvous point, it was my job to get us to the initial point. And from the initial point, I turned it over to the bombardier, and he'd fly the plane for about 15 to 25 seconds with the bomb sight.
For someone who doesn't know what a B-26 is, can you describe it as best as you can?
Sure, twin-engine bomber. We had, a crew would be, I think we had 6 people. That's my crew right there. And there would be 6 of us, and a radio man, and an aerial gunner, pilot, co-pilot, and myself. There'd be 6 of us. And that twin engine, and we had 1 tail, plus plexiglass nose, and that's where I sat, in the nose. I got a picture of me in the nose of an aircraft.
So you guys would get your briefing.
We go to brief.
Was that like was that a tense moment for you guys?
Yeah, we'd all sit there. It was very quiet, and they'd tell us exactly where we were going, how we were going to get there, and whether we had, I'm trying to think of this, not protection.
Escort?
Escorts was the word I'm thinking. Whether we had escorts or not. And they were mostly, when we did have escorts, they were mostly P-47s. Every once in a while we'd have some P-38s or P-51s we'd have. They would help. But they wouldn't go all the way with us. They go as far as they go most of the way. And then time we got over target, it was nothing but flak is all it was.
Now, you guys were tactical. Can you explain what that means?
Tactical means pinpoint targeting. We did bomb bridges, and mostly bridges, and airports. We bombed Frankfurt on Main one time, I remember that. And little smaller targets. We didn't do any saturation bombing. We had pinpoint targets. So we had to be fairly accurate.
Do you remember your first mission?
Yeah. I sure do. I remember the first mission was a milk run. And I said, wow, there's nothing to it. I guess you know what a milk run is. And well, the first mission was very simple. I flew as a bombardier that first mission. And then when I came back from that, they needed a navigator, so I was supposed to. I didn't fly every day as a navigator. I flew about every third day. And although it was several times back to back, I'd fly some missions. They tell you you're going to fly every 3 or 4 days, but sometimes you flew 3 or 4 days in a row too.
What altitude would you guys be dropping your bombs from?
Oh, we were low, under 10,000 feet. Never go above 10. Occasionally we might fly on the way to a target, to dodge either ice or something or whatever, but we wouldn't drop a bomb. Most of our bombing went from around 10,000 feet, maybe up to 15 tops.
Now, once you started flying missions, was your crew pretty set?
Yeah.
What did you think about your crew?
Oh, we were great guys. We had a good time. We protected each other, and we helped each other in everywhere we could. And of course, me being the navigator, I had usually 9 aircraft or 27, depending on whether I were a box lead or a flight lead. And there was one fella. He flew on my right wing. And he was a pilot. And his name was Stanley something or other, Stanley Zark. And we'd come back, he'd always come and yell at me, "What do you do this for? What do you do that for? You trying to get us killed?" He didn't say killed, he said killed. He was a funny fellow. And a lot of times I'd fly with different pilots too. I mean, you didn't have a set pilot. We were supposed to have a set pilot. A guy named James Jesse was my regular pilot. And then I flew with another guy named Kessel, Lester Kessel. And usually the same radio man would go with us. So it was interesting.
Any particular missions where it got a little hairy, or did you ever encounter fighter?
Never. We saw fighters in the air, but our fighters would apparently take them and get them away from us. And I've seen them. That's a few fighters, but not many at all. Most big problem we had was with flak. Flak, there was just about flak on almost every mission, with a few exceptions.
Did you ever witness any friendly planes being shot down?
No, I never saw one fly. I really didn't. I know I was watching ahead if they were behind. Being the navigator, I'm in front, and you just can't. You got to watch what you're doing. So I couldn't. I know we lost. I think we lost maybe one airplane, 2 airplanes at the very most, in all the missions that I flew.
So, going back to the tactical question, you guys would be assigned to maybe hit bridges and...
Bridges. Well, let me see. I got it right here. I'll tell you what. No, I just didn't tell you. Ryan Airfield. Can't read my own writing. Parmesans. Golly. The railroad bridge at Bullay, that was my first mission. And then the second mission, I was a lead navigator for sea fight. We bombed Stetnitz, Bergladbach, Mayen, Reda, Capellen, but it don't. Eller Bridge, Bingen. I had to bomb some woods on March the 9th. Werebush, Frankfurt on Main again, Marsburg, Primus, but it didn't. Special 6-ship formation, I flew that one time. I don't know what we did. English, Kirken, Schwellen, Ahaus, Borken, Dingen, Lindbergh, Ebracht, Northeim, Jena, and the last one was April 11th. We bombed Bamberg. And I was a lead C flight, B flight, B. I was mostly flight leader. I lit a box a couple of times. God, I can't remember too many of them. I remember some of the missions, what kind of problems we had.
Hold on one second. Were you able to maintain correspondence with your family back home?
Through those little V-mail, I think they called it. Mm-hmm. I believe, yeah. You get letters.
Did it mean a lot to you to get a letter from back home?
Sure, yeah. Always like to hear from what's going on at home. My mother used to write me, my wife wrote me.
What was life like on base for you, when you weren't flying?
Well, when we were flying, we was mostly sleeping. And we're playing cards. That's about it. Occasionally we played horseshoes a lot, outside. And but most of the time we were playing poker or sleeping, one or the other.
Were you aware that the war was winding down? Could you guys see that?
Yeah, we kept up with everything that was going on. The radio kept us busy, and Axis Sally, she'd get at the beginning. I remember she was telling us to go home, and you guys that got no chance, and this, that, and the other. We'd listen to her every night. She was funny, and we all were laughing at her. And then, of course, I remember one night I was lying in bed and we heard that Roosevelt died. That hit us pretty good. I mean, it hit me anyway. I was sorry to hear that. And but at night we'd play cards, and of course you couldn't have too much light because you had to be careful. And I remember we made hot tea on the stove in the tent, and we lived in a tent. Sometimes we we moved one time to a wooden shack or something that we had in there. I remember that.
What was the food like?
The food? Food was good. I'm not a fancy food eater, and to me, I like everything. I remember when I loved peanut butter and bought a big old jar of peanut butter on the table all the time. Food was good, real good. I mean, I liked Army food. That Army GI bread, that was great stuff. Yeah.
Did you ever take any? Well, obviously you guys would get like a furlough or a leave every once in a while.
Yeah, we had to leave, and a lot of guys went to London. I went to London, had that battle jacket made, that Eisenhower jacket, and then we'd get a couple of days off, and we'd go, chase girls if we could find them. And they were all so busy. And you couldn't get a hotel room. There was no way to get a hotel room. They were all busy. But it was different. I can tell you one mission we came on it was scary as hell. And we were coming back from a mission. I forget when it was. I think it was in March or April. And I think I was a box leader for that day, and we had cloud cover completely coming back. And all of a sudden I looked down and the clouds had disappeared, and I looked down, the biggest city I ever saw in my life. I said, what the hell is that? And I cut my map out, and I said, my God, I said, that's Arnhem in Holland. And I said, I'm 30 miles north of where I'm supposed to be. So I went 30 left, and we went left, and just as we went left, you talk about luck. I'm going to tell you, just as we turned left, boom, 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 here comes all the flak over there. If I hadn't just spotted it at that time, ain't no telling how many of us were hit. So I said, them sons of bitches are tracking us. Excuse me. I said, they're tracking us. And I said, they're going to think I'm going to make another left turn. I said, I'm going back to the right. So I said, 40 right. And we all went back to the right, showing up. Guess it. All the flak come up over here. And then I get one more turn. I forgot, I think I went back to the left again. And then we were across. I looked down there, was the Rhine River was down there. And Arnhem was on the Rhine River, and I knew that all the Germans were to the right of the Rhine River, and we were, and the Americans were on the left. And we crossed the Rhine River, and the flak disappeared. That was it. But boy, that was close. I remember that. That's about the closest I could come. It was my fault. If we could have got killed, it'd been all my fault. There was a bunch of us too. I got lucky. Real lucky.
Do you think luck plays a part in some of those things?
Beg pardon?
Do you think luck plays a part in some of those things?
Hell yeah. I'm telling you, it was luck. Trust me, it was lucky. We, you just get, that's an example right there. Just look. I happened to make a left turn instead of going straight or a right turn. That's real luck. But other than that, my job was to get from the rendezvous point to the initial point. And Bombardier took over. After he took over, we made a 20 to 30 second, well, it wasn't 30, about 18 to 25 second bomb run. And that's when you have to fly straight and level. And it's dangerous as hell because that's when everything is going to get the bombs off right. And as soon as we dropped the bombs away, I'd give them a left turn. I'd give them 30 left, 40. I always make a left turn off the target. It's easier. The pilot's over here, and it's easier to make a left turn than it is a right turn. We make a left turn off the target, and we drop about 1,000 feet in a hurry. So that way we go faster as you're going down, and we get away.
How fast could a B-26 go?
We cruised around 240, 250. And it was a hot ship to land, I know that. I didn't like to sit in the nose during landing. I had to go back in the radio room. I don't know why. It didn't make any difference. I could have stayed in the nose. But I wanted to go back in the radio room.
Was there any instance you remember where maybe the pilot really made a difference? Where,
both of them. The pilots to me were good. I remember Lester and James Jesse. His real name was James Jesse. Isn't that something? Instead of Jesse James, it was James Jesse. And he was good, and Lester was real good. And we got along good. They were good pilots. I mean, when I gave them a heading, I mean, they'd take it.
Now, you kind of poked fun at some of the Southern kids when you're talking about training in the Army.
Oh, I tell you what, that was way back then. I never forget some of them. But they were the nicest young men. They just, they were brought up in the country, and they didn't know if the Army left, right. They didn't know anything about that. But I taught them good. I guarantee you, some of those guys are still living because of what I taught them. I know that. I was a good teacher.
What what does that say about America when you can enter a unit and it's guys from all over? I mean, what's that like meeting new people?
Well, it didn't mean anything to me because we were all Americans. We were all fighting for the same country. We were all about the same age, and we just learned different things about people, what they did in this state and that state, and they're all a little bit different, high school and all. But we got along fine.
Do you think growing up in the Great Depression helped you guys during your military service?
I really don't know. I can't answer that question. I remember the Great Depression. I remember part of it. I remember my daddy, my stepfather taking me downtown in New Haven, Connecticut, and seeing all the people in front of the banks trying to stand in line and get their money out, and it was closed. It was terrible. I remember that. And but that's all I remember. I remember things were tight, and my uncle gave me a dime one time when I was a kid in Boston. I still remember that. That's the one that took me to the ball game. That's the most money I ever saw in my life was a dime. And I was way back. I must have been 6, 7 years old.
Excuse me. What was your last? Do you remember your last mission? And did you know it was going to be your last mission?
No. My last mission was flown out of St. Quentin. We moved from St. Quentin to another place in Germany, to because we were getting ready to go into Germany, and we needed to be closer to our targets. And we moved to a base in Germany, never flew a mission from there. The war ended probably 3 weeks, 3 weeks after we got there. And the reason for that is every time we'd go to briefing for a mission, we found out that what's his name, Patton, I think it was, he was coming. He took over, and we didn't want to bomb our own troops. So I moved to Germany. I can't even remember the name of the base or where it was, but it was in Germany. But I remember it was hot in the summertime. It was summer because we went to a swimming pool. You know, I remember that. There was a place where there was a little pond or something, a lake. We went swimming in it. So it had to be warm enough to swim.
The war ended on May 8th. Do you remember what it was like, you know, when the war ended?
Yeah, everybody was happy. Now we get to go home, and now we had numbers or something or other. It all depends when you know. And when the war ended, I didn't get home until November of '45, and the war ended May. That's right. So I stayed in this base in Germany, June, July, August, September, October, November. 5-6 months we were there, just sitting, waiting to go home.
They didn't tell you that you were going to be training for Japan, or? Well,
no, I got my orders to go to Japan. I was on maneuvers, and we were like a cadre, a bunch of replacement soldiers and replacement officers. And so when they sent me from maneuvers in Louisiana to California.
No, I was talking about when the war in Europe ended.
Oh, no.
You weren't slated to go to
No,
Japan?
and as far as I know, no. I was slated ready to go home. Yeah.
Was there any celebration that you particularly remember about the war ending?
No. Well, we celebrated. We probably had an extra drink or something. You know, we as officers, we were very fortunate. We had a ration, and they rationed us with whiskey. And every month, you ain't believing this, but every month we get about 3/5 of 3 bottles of whiskey, a couple of 3 bottles of cognac, a bottle of gin, a bottle of vodka. It must have been 5 or 6 different bottles every month. That was our rations. We could take them or not, but and most of us would drink it. I remember playing a lot of poker that last 6 months, and that I didn't fly. I guess it was 6 months. The war ended. My last mission was in April, and I didn't get home till November. I remember getting home on November the 11th, which was Armistice Day, and that's the day I landed in New York. Came home on a different ship. It wasn't a Mauritania, it was a sister ship, I guess.
Do you remember hearing about the atomic bombs?
Yeah. Well, we heard about it. It was amazing to us that such a big ship was needed just to take one bomb. I mean, we were surprised at that. But we were glad to see the Japanese in the Japanese part of the war.
What was that like sailing into New York?
When I came into New York, it wasn't so much leaving I can remember. I don't remember, but coming back, you could come down the Hudson River and see the Statue of Liberty and all that, whatever it was. It was quite a thrill. And as soon as we hit as soon as we hit land, they gave us quarters somewhere in New Jersey, and then we could leave the next day. I didn't wait. Hell, I didn't even spend the night there. I got on a train and I went straight to Connecticut. My wife was already with my mother, and they called them, told them to pick me up at the railroad station.
What was it like to see your mom again?
Oh, it was something. It's something you never forget. Yeah. It was something.
What did you do after the war?
Well, after the war, my father had a furniture manufacturer. He was manufacturing upholstered furniture, and he wanted me to come and take over the factory and run it. I run it with him, and he wanted to leave it all to me. And I had asthma, and I never told anybody. When I went in the service, they wouldn't have let me in, and the Air Force would have never let me in. And I had asthma when I was a kid. And I remember when I used to go to that factory, I mean, I couldn't breathe. And so my wife wanted me to come back to Atlanta and do something in Atlanta. And rather than stay in Connecticut, and I didn't like cold weather anyway, so I came down here. And the first thing I did, let's see, the first job I had when I come back to Atlanta, what did I do? I went to Fort McPherson and helped them, as a counselor, helped the guys get out of the service. And then I went into the...
So you said you were a counselor.
At Fort Mac here in Atlanta.
Would you say you saw guys with PTSD?
With what?
With post-traumatic stress syndrome? Would you say that guys were...
You know, I don't remember. All I remember is I worked there about, I think, with 2-3 months. And I'd write them up, you know, help them write a resume of what they've been doing and what they could do so they could get a job. And I was a civilian at that time. I had hardly taken my uniforms off. And I did that for a while. And then my wife had a girlfriend who had her husband was, and he and I got to be friends. We went into the sandwich business here in Atlanta. And I had a sandwich company up on Ponce de Leon Avenue here. And I serviced all the cotton mills they had, and I served all the city schools of the city of Atlanta. Served them all with sandwiches. See, they didn't have cafeterias in the schools back then. And I did that, and then we sold the business. And when we sold it, I was doing nothing but playing golf. And a guy came through and ran an ad in the paper for somebody to sell cocoa and chocolate. So I applied for the job, and he said, "You're hired right away." He didn't waste any time. And he hired me to sell cocoa and chocolate, and that company was called Rockwood Chocolate Company. They're out of business now. And I traveled Georgia and Alabama selling cocoa and chocolate and candy bars. And from there, I met a few people, and I went into the brokerage business, which was candy and allied things like that. And I was a candy broker for 40 years.
Do you think your experience in World War II was helpful for your later life?
Absolutely, it helps you, especially in meeting people and learning how to react to people, to how they feel and how you feel, and how to be friends with people and use a smile. You get so many things. You learn a lot when you're in the service. I tell you, the service was good for me. It helped. It made a man out of me, I think. No question about it.
Anything I've missed here today? Anything that...
I can't do that. I really don't know. You'd have to ask the questions, and then it'd come to me. But other than that, I think you got most of it.
Well, I'd like to ask you
Sure.
just some basic questions here, and
Sure.
we ask all our veterans these questions. Do you believe it's important that kids today, growing up, middle school, high school, college, do you believe it's important that they know something about World War II?
Absolutely. No question in my mind, they should. The things that happened in World War II, which is like the Holocaust, for instance, if they don't know anything about the Holocaust, they're missing so much. I mean, they should know it so they can tell their children. And that's what the war was all about. Free the world from all these tyrannic, idiot Nazis and the Japanese.
Do you believe it's important that we have museums, such as the one that I work at, to
Sure.
commemorate and honor you
Although
guys?
I haven't been to one, but I know it's important. I would like it. If it was next door, I'd go. But yeah, I certainly do.
This is kind of sort of off topic, but I'm working on a project at the museum to document how veterans feel about the American flag, and just like to ask, what does the American flag mean to you?
It means a hell of a lot to me. It's there's no question about what a great country we live in, and yeah, I think the flag is beautiful, and I respect it. And every time I see it, I salute it.
And along that same vein, you mentioned you're a baseball fan and things of that nature. What does it mean to hear the Star Spangled Banner played?
Every time I hear the Star Spangled Banner, if it goes on, I stay here and I wait till it's over. I don't get up from while it's playing. I respectfully sit here and wait for it to be over. And sometimes I watch it and I get tears coming to my eyes. I love my country. Great country.
People are going to watch this tape maybe a couple hundred years from now, and they're going to learn about your story, and long after I'm gone even, and they're going to hear what you did, a little bit about your life. If you could leave a message for future Americans who might be watching this tape, what would that message be?
Hey, I'd have to think it over. I really don't know. All I can say is just be thankful that you live in America. That's one thing. Be very thankful. This is the greatest country in the world. There's no question in my mind about it. And the best, it's the opportunity you get to live a beautiful life. And you are what you make of yourself, and you have the right and it's easy to become. If you want to get educated, you can. With nobody stopping you. I think it's a great place to live.
Anything that you would like to add for the camera today?
I can't think of anything.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Bourne. I appreciate you allowing me into your home today, and once again,
nice having you.
Real pleasure.